Hello, I have an observation to share with you. Consider narrative breaks, internal divisions in stories for different reasons and in different ways for different mediums. Let me clarify to be safe. When I say internal divisions, I mean points in stories that imply or force the audience to stop participating in the story for a time. The end of a chapter in a novel and the interlude of a stage production are the most clear examples of each. I do not, however, mean the clear end of a story, even if the story, whatever medium it may be in, has a sequel. I'll begin by looking at books, or rather novels, to further elaborate. A written work that is longer than a short story, and thus isn't expected to be read in a single sitting, is often divided into chapters. The chapters are divisions at often thematic points in the story, points where a present question is answered, a problem dealt with, or the story otherwise slows down. These, along with the suggestion inherent in the division of chapters, makes these moments the logical point that a reader could end the reading session and set the book aside for whatever amount of time is necessary. It is, however, only a suggestion, and a reader could continue on regardless. Unlike some other mediums, the choice of how the narrative is broken by the audience's disengagement is on the audience. A short story, however, is intentionally short enough to be read in a single sitting, there being no implied breaks to leave the story and return. A short story is taken whole, and has an effective similarity to much of stage and film. In a stage production, there is a possibility of a break for practical purposes, brief moments for the changing of props and set pieces, or an interlude to give the performers a break, which, of course, gives the audience a break as well. But these do not necessarily mean a full break, as the production may find a way to keep the audience in the story while the practical concerns are handled, leading to a similar effect to the short story. Film may go even further, with the audience seeing a final product where all practical concerns unnecessary to the story have been disguised or edited out, requiring no break whatsoever. There is a further deviation with episodic storytelling, as one might find in comic books or a weekly TV series. Breaks are interwoven into the story and, at least as presented, are enforced by the creator. However, these do not necessarily have a similar effect to written chapters, as such stories may present themselves with varying levels of continuity and attention to story. An episode could be a single plot, not carried to the next, or the entire story may be one plot line, and it could be anywhere in between and switch from episode to episode. A newer form of storytelling is video games, which have an interesting place with this idea. To avoid repeating parts of the story that you have already seen, the player has to have their progress saved. So the breaks in the story are defined by when and where a player could save their progress. A game could have designated save points that have to be used, but as time has gone on, it has become more commonplace for games to either let the player save at any moment they choose, provided they're not in a scene, or to have the game automatically save for them at regular intervals without prompting. The result is that, akin to novels, a break from the narrative is optional and only suggested by the work, but at points that the creator has control over. Even newer is the idea of mixed media storytelling, using multiple mediums to tell a single story, often using the internet and its ability to host different forms of media. These stories can play out in such a variety of ways that it's difficult to describe a single way to interact with them. Some can be short videos, as short as a single scene, meant to be seen as one reads through a novel. Sometimes a website can both tell a story and be a story. Sometimes the story is a mystery that the reader must piece together by visiting many places on the internet, seeing many different mediums. Obviously, how the story will be parsed by the creator and how it will be experienced by the audience is highly variable. It could end up resembling another medium, or changing between forms as it goes on. I feel I should note, however, that not holding to the rules of a single medium can create an uncertainty in the audience, something that some would find exciting, but others distressing. So, what is this all about? Well, when an audience temporarily leaves a story, it has an effect on their thoughts about it, as the point where it stops is the point where one will internalize and analyze what they have witnessed so far. So a viewer or reader will draw conclusions from this partial information and often make predictions. In fact, there is a psychological phenomenon that shows that a person is inclined to hold on to conclusions based on initial analysis even after being shown contradictory information at a later time. A writer aware of this can use it to certain effects in fiction. An obvious and easy example is a cliffhanger, ending a section by making what happens next highly necessary information that is then withheld, usually by placing a character in great danger, but also perhaps by raising a major question and withholding the answer. But they could also do so less obviously, like having a major running mystery throughout a series, or having a misunderstanding or deception still in play at the end of a section. There is an opposite side to this. Leaving the audience to analyze and predict the story with partial information like this can lead to the audience drawing conclusions that are out of step with the rest of the story. While this can be rectified, such as if the story can convince the audience that the conclusion was in fact inevitable, it can lead to dissonance with the piece and negative emotions being directed at the story or its creator. Different mediums have different relationships with this phenomenon. Short stories and film don't have major breaks before the story is over, usually giving the audience the conclusion, if there is one, before the story's end without the audience stopping to make their own first. Longer form stories have more time to correct erroneous conclusions and can have more breaks that allow new information to settle in and override previous misinformation and misunderstandings presented by the story. These are less pros and cons and more features of the mediums. The point, if any, being that this doesn't weaken or strengthen any particular medium as much as it clarifies somewhat what kind of stories are told and how to tell them, adding another piece to the puzzle of making a good story. That is my observation. Thank you for listening.